Hello and welcome back to a few minutes of history. In today's episode, I shall be talking about the Battle of Bamber Bridge, which took place in Lancashire, England. Now, it may sound like a battle from the War of the Roses, the English Civil War, or even a battle between the Anglo-Saxons and Viking invaders, but no, this battle took place in 1943 during the Second World War. But I hear you say, the Germans never invaded, so how come there was a battle on English soil? The answer is that it took place between black and white American G.I.s. So let's get into it. When American troops started deploying to Britain to begin the build-up for D-Day and to contribute to the air war, they didn't only bring men and material, they also brought some of their social issues, mainly the Jim Crow segregation laws and rules. Britain didn't have such laws, as there were few black people in the country at the time, especially outside of the main cities. In rural areas, especially in small villages, very few people had ever seen a black person. The people of Britain didn't understand the segregation, and for the most part, treated all the American troops the same. But when they saw the way the white troops treated black soldiers, they didn't like it. And in many places, where there was a mixture of black and white GIs, the US Army tried to impose their segregation rules outside of their camps. This was very difficult in small villages. One such place was Bamber Bridge. The Air Force Station 569, known as Adams Hall due to the building at its entrance, came under the US 8th Air Force. It set up part of the Railway Control Depot network, which processed newly arrived troops landing at ports such as Liverpool before they were assigned to their units. It was home to the 1511th Quartermaster Truck Regiment, which consisted mainly of black GIs. The various companies of the regiment were based in different locations in the UK, and at the time of the incident, there were elements of the 1945th and 1949th Quartermaster Truck Companies in Adams Hall. The black soldiers were welcomed by the locals and treated no differently to anyone else. However, some of their white counterparts didn't like this and tried to impose a colour ban. The locals were having none of it and imposed their own ban by hanging signs outside the village's 3 pubs saying, "Black troops only." This led one lieutenant to say, and I quote, "One thing I noticed here, and which I don't like, is the fact that the English don't draw any colour line. The English must be pretty ignorant. I can't see how a white girl could associate with a Negro." End quote. The problems were exacerbated when the 234th Military Police Company were stationed on the other side of the town. Military police standing orders were to arrest anyone off base without a pass, being disorderly, or being incorrectly dressed. The MPs, like the vast majority of the white GIs, took exception to the general friendly treatment of the black troops and the fact that the local women liked the soldiers. On the 24th of June 1943, some of the members of the 1511th went to the Ye Old Hob Inn for a drink. Whilst enjoying a pint or two with the locals, 2 members of the 234th MP came in, responding to reports of trouble. Corporal Roy Windsor and Private First Class Ralph Ridgway approached Private Eugene Nunn, who was wearing a field jacket instead of his Class A's. They tried to arrest him, but the locals and one British soldier confronted the MPs and told them to leave Nunn and his colleagues alone as they weren't causing any trouble. The situation was diffused by a black Staff Sergeant, William Bird, but as the MPs drove off, a beer bottle was thrown at their jeep. Windsor and Ridgway then picked up 2 more MPs and were told by Captain Julius Hurst and Lieutenant Gerald Windsor that they needed to arrest the black soldiers. The MPs went to meet the soldiers on the station road as they returned to their camp on Mounsey Road. A subsequent fight ensued and an MP drew his pistol and fired a shot, injuring Private Lynn Adams, who had been responsible for throwing the bottle. A rumour quickly spread that the MPs were hunting down and shooting black soldiers. The soldiers then made their way back to the camp, and their acting CO, Major George Harris, and the unit's only black officer, Lieutenant Edwin Jones, temporarily calmed the situation. But it then rapidly deteriorated when several jeeps full of MPs and an improvised armoured car with a machine gun fitted arrived. The black soldiers went to the armoury and equipped themselves with weapons and ammunition. Some of the soldiers formed barricades at their camp, while others spilled out into the town, fighting running battles with the MPs. A firefight then rapidly broke out, which left 7 wounded personnel, of which 5, an officer, 3 of the black soldiers and an MP had gunshot wounds, and 2 MPs had been beaten up. Worst of all, one of the black soldiers, Private William Crossland, was shot dead. He is buried in the American Cemetery in Cambridge. 2 trials were held after the incident. In the first, held on the 18th of August 1943, 4 black soldiers, Lynn Adams, Eugene Nunn, William Ogletree, and James Wise, were convicted of riotous behaviour, resisting arrest, and assaulting members of the 234th MP. Adams, Nunn, and Ogletree got 3 years hard labour and dishonourable discharges, and Wise got 2.5 years hard labour and a dishonourable discharge. This was for their part in the initial brawl at the Ye Old Hob Inn that sparked the whole incident. The second trial saw 35 dependents up before the court. The trial finished on the 18th of September, with 7 of those accused being acquitted and 28 being convicted. Those convicted got sentences of around 3 months to 15 years, with 7 of them receiving 12 years plus. The charges varied, but included rioting, ignoring orders, mutiny, and the seizure of weapons. Sentence reviews later carried out resulted in 1 man being released and the others having their sentences reduced. 15 of the men resumed active service duty in June 1944, and 6 others had their sentences reduced further. The defendant with the sentence of 15 years ended up just serving 13 months. Further justice came when the commander of the US 8th Air Force put most of the blame on the MPs and white officers of the 1-5-11th, citing their racist attitudes as the main problem. The solution to try and prevent further incidents was for transport units to be rolled into a single command, the removal of racist and inexperienced or incompetent officers from their posts, and the integration of black officers and soldiers into military police units. The measures saw a rise in morale of black soldiers based in England and a fall in the number of court-martial incidents. This wasn't to say that incidents didn't occur, as there were several more during the war, but none on the scale of what took place at Bamber Bridge. Well, that concludes today's episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you very soon. Cheery bye.